Hey, Tim Sechler, owner of the Sechler Law Firm and the Red Wagon Club, and welcome to Wagon Wheel Wednesday, where I spin this wheel, and there's a whole bunch of questions I haven't seen before, and I'm supposed to answer them on the fly by the questions these guys are going to shout out at me. So, hope you learned something. Let's have some fun together. All right. Frequently asked questions.
Am I responsible for my parents' care expenses?
Am I responsible for my parents' care expenses? In Pennsylvania, the unbelievable truth is you could be. Okay, so let me tell you how this works. Pennsylvania has a law called the Filial Support law that holds the idea, it's kind of like child support. It's like mom and dad support. If someone needs long-term care and no one else is paying, and that's the key part, no one else is paying, you could personally be held responsible for their long-term care costs. This hardly ever happens. It really only happens if they're not eligible for like a Medicaid program to pay for long-term care. But this is why you need to avoid mistakes, because when families make mistakes when it comes to long-term care planning and asset protection, the kids can be the ones that have to bear the cost. So be real careful. So frequently asked question, can you be responsible for your parents' long-term care? The answer is yes, and a lot of people find out the hard way that that is true. So let's try it again. Tip of the day, a tip of the day. This one's on me. I'm just supposed to come up with anything. So here's the tip. Don't rely too heavily on beneficiary designations on your financial accounts. Okay, so if you go look at your IRA or you look at all of the investment accounts you may have, it's very common practice to put beneficiary designations on all of them. If I pass away, pay it to my kids or whatever the case is. Here's the problem with relying too heavily on beneficiary designations. It's overly simplistic, right? You miss the opportunity to plan for what I call the other important questions. With estate planning, we do more than just answer the question, who gets it when I pass away? So let's say I name my kid as a beneficiary on an account. What happens if that kid has died before me? What happens if that kid is disabled? What happens if that kid is underage? What happens if that kid goes to a divorce after they receive the inheritance? And so what you do with a beneficiary designation is you miss the opportunity to plan for all of these other important things, like what happens if I go to the nursing home, and what happens if when I pass away my wife needs long-term care. These are real issues that cannot be answered with a beneficiary designation. So the tip of the day, don't rely too heavily on beneficiary designations. You need to do some estate planning documents like a will or a trust to supplement those tools. All right, let's do another one. What would Tim do? This ought to be fun. What would Tim do?
If you were going to leave one personal effect to your kids, what would it be?
If I were going to leave one personal effect to my kids, what would it be? Actually, I have it right here. I got a story for you right here. So I'll be right back. It would be this. This is an old 45 Colt revolver, and there's a story to this. I'm just going to read it to you. Harry Brothers Miller, which was my great-grandfather, was with his battalion in World War I in the Dominican Republic. Entering a small hut, he found a very frail old man laying in a cot. He asked the man if there were any arms in the hut. The man swore there were none. Harry turned to leave the hut, and when he did, the old man pulled out his revolver to shoot him. Just in that time, another Marine came through the door, saw what was happening, and took care of the old man. That's the gun they took off of the guy. And the reason it means a lot to me, even though it's not worth a lot financially, I look at this and I think all the time, had that little trigger been pulled, there is no Tim, there are no kids, and this just reminds me of how frail this all is. So I keep it in my office. If there were one thing I would leave to my kid, it would be that. All right, let's do this again. Bucket list. So this is where I'm supposed to share something I really want to do. Something I really want to do is to repeat a trip I've already done. A couple years back, my mom and I took a trip to Ireland. We've got Irish descent, and she had never been. It was kind of her bucket list item, and we went over there, rented a car. We just followed tour buses all around Ireland because we didn't do the tours ourselves. But it was like Thelma and Louise driving all over Ireland. I want to do it again. Now that I know a thing, I've been there once, I want to do that again. So now my mom's bucket list item has now become my bucket list item, and I want to do that again. So let's spin the wheel again. WWTD, what would Tim do?
If you hit the lottery and won $1 million, what would your first move be regarding estate planning?
If I won the lottery for $1 million and I needed to do an estate plan, what would I do? Well, the first thing I would do is call an estate planning attorney, not name myself, because there's this saying in the law that only an idiot takes himself for his own client. So I'd reach out to an estate planning lawyer, and I would make sure that that money, if when I passed away, got to my kids in a responsible way. See, I still have little guys. And when we're doing estate planning for young parents, my wife and I, what we're really concerned about would be what happens if something happens to both of us. If we're being real serious about it, if something happens to one of us, most families, the money just goes to the other spouse. The other spouse continues to take care of the kids. But if something happened to both of us, now the question is, now who's in control? Now you can name a guardian for who's in control of the kids up until they hit age 18. But if the kids run into this $1 million at age 18, most of them are going to make some mistakes. And so that money should be properly funneled to a trust where I would put a family member, probably my brother, in control of the money until the kids turn like 30 years old and get some maturity under the belt. So I would make sure that I had underage trust built into the estate plan to make sure the kids don't turn into jerks on their 18th or 21st birthday. One more. Legal lingo decode. So I'm supposed to define some legal tool that they're going to throw at me, and I hope I know it.
Fiduciary.
A fiduciary. That one I got. So a fiduciary is someone who owes a financial responsibility to someone else. Okay, so for example, if I am my dad's power of attorney, I'm acting on his behalf. I owe him the duty to take proper care of his money, to make good decisions on his behalf. If I take his money and make decisions on my behalf, I have violated my fiduciary duty and could be subject to penalties and crimes and all the rest. So a fiduciary is someone who owes a legal financial responsibility to someone else. Common is an agent under a power of attorney, executor of a will, trustee of the trust. Those people are called fiduciaries. All right. Hope you enjoyed today's video. This was called the Wagon Wheel Wednesday video. If you want to learn more about estate planning, how to take care of your family, how to do some asset protection work, you should go to sechlerlawfirm.com. Register for one of our free workshops. We're going to teach you all the things you need to know in order to protect your family. So thanks for watching.